Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today to learn what the number one leak in your sales and your business process is, and more importantly, how to stop that leak and how, as a result, to generate more home sales. My name is Mona Hilton. I'm with Genesis Global Technologies, and we are the authors of Developer's Advantage. Developer's Advantage is a sales and marketing and follow-up automation system designed specifically for developers and builders who are trying to sell in a community or a building. Genesis is an 18-year-old company that specializes in solving business issues and sales and marketing issues using technology as a tool. And I want to congratulate you for taking the time to join us today. Just by joining today, you're already heads and tails above your competition, who might very well recognize that there is a leak, but they don't have any idea how to solve it. And a lot of people, as you know, are just wishing and hoping that it will disappear. But we all know that that's not going to happen. So that's why I'm so looking forward to sharing with you today on such an important topic that directly impacts your home sales, your revenue, and ultimately your profits. In fact, this issue is so big that if you could just stop this one single leak, your home sales and revenues would increase by 9% to up to 38%. Let me ask you, what would a 9 to 38% increase in your home sales look like for your community? Pretty nice, huh? Yep. Well, now that I have your attention, I want to ask you for a favor. I want to ask you to give yourself permission. Now, I have found in my life that there's a great deal of power in simply giving myself permission to think outside the box, to tear down preconceptions that I've had and limiting beliefs that have shaped my decisions for years. So giving myself permission has been a very powerful tool, and I would recommend that you take a moment to just make up your mind that you're going to give yourself permission to set aside all your preconceived ideas of that's not going to work because, or we've never done it that way before because. There's a study done that says that if you've been in an industry for more than 3 years, you have stopped thinking outside the box. So let's make a conscious decision not to do that. That actually reminds me of what I call the ham story. And the ham story is just a great example of thinking outside the box. As the story goes, there was a brand new bride. And she got married, and it was her very first holiday season. And she went to the store and decided to bake a ham, just like her mother had done for years. So she bought her ham. She took it home. She cut off each of the ends of the ham and put it in the roasting pan and then put it in the oven. Her brand new husband noticed what she did and said, "Why did you cut off the ends of the ham before you put it in the oven?" She said, "You know, that's how my mom taught me to do it. I've seen her do it that way for years, so there's got to be a reason." So after dinner, they decided to call her mom, and they asked her, "Hey, Mom, why did you always cut off the ends of the ham, and why did you teach me to do it that way?" Her mother said, "Well, you know, that is a great question. And actually, that's what I saw my mother do, your grandmother. For years and years, that's how I watched her do it, so I figured there must be a good reason." So they decided to call the grandmother, and the grandmother said, "That's a great question, and there's a really good answer for that. I was actually raised in the Depression era, and when I was growing up, we only had one roasting pan, and every time we bought a holiday ham, it never fit in the roasting pan. So we ended up cutting off the ends, and we would freeze them because it was a depression and we didn't want to waste anything. But we had to cut off the ends of the ham to make it fit." So lo and behold, for year after year, generation after generation, they were cutting off the ends of the ham for, frankly, a reason that no longer existed any longer. It was no longer a relevant reason. So I would challenge us today not to cut off the ends of the ham, just for today. Now, one distinct and direct result of the economic recession that we have all been faced head-on with is a tightening of the belt. There is a compression of resources Everyone is doing more than they ever did before with less resources. We're juggling more and more details, concerns, lists, tasks than any human being can possibly handle. The demands or the expectations of our buyers are higher than before. Their willingness to spend more and more money is just not what it used to be. Management is still expecting a return on their profits. You know how that goes. And stress levels, as a result, are off the charts. And if you're in new home sales, you might recognize yourself in this picture. You are likely carrying the world on your shoulder. Have you felt like this lady looks? I know I have. How many times have you woken up straight in the middle of the night with what I call an oh shoot moment, where you say, oh shoot, was I supposed to call so-and-so, John Smith, today, and what did I promise that buyer I would do for them before the end of the day? And oh, you know, I'm so embarrassed to call now. Can you relate? I know I can. Every time I do this, everyone laughs and they go, oh, wait, that's me. And it's so true. So my question for you today is, what is keeping you up at night? What are the things that you worry about and the things that you're trying to keep track of and the items that are on your to-do list? Is it financial stress? Is it workload? Is it overload? Is it lack of resources? Is it your things to-do list? Is it perhaps your sales revenues or your cash flow or the number of leads you're getting or maybe the number of leads you're not getting that you would like to get? Well, you know, a few years ago, just as the recession had begun, there was a survey that was done, and business owners were asked, what is your number one business failure? What do you think they said? There you go. Are you surprised? It wasn't PR, customer service, cash flow. It was actually follow-up, right? Can you relate to that? Well, you know, one of the best examples of follow-up, I think everyone would agree, is Colonel Sanders. Now, you might already know his story. He started in the early 1950s. I believe it was 1952. And he actually had a restaurant in Sturgis, Kentucky. And the federal government built a freeway that completely bypassed his restaurant. And his business dried up literally overnight. So he was forced into an early retirement, but he wasn't really ready to retire. So he had this idea that he was going to sell his chicken recipe to restaurants across the United States. So he hit the road, and as the story goes, Colonel Sanders was rejected over 1,000 times. Can you imagine being rejected over 1,000 times? They made fun of his starched white shirt and white suit. They made fun of his goatee. They just generally made fun of him, and nobody would listen to his story or buy his chicken recipe. You know, you have to ask yourself, if I got turned down 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, would I keep going to 1,000 times of rejection? Probably not. Because the reality is there are a lot of legitimate barriers to following up and to persistence. There's an old saying, if you're looking for an excuse, any excuse will do. And sometimes we don't have to look very far. These are some of the barriers or reasons that we've heard for not following up, for not persisting. And I'm sure as you look at them, you'll probably go, I've heard that before, or maybe you'll say, I've said that before. I mean, some of the obvious ones, I don't want to appear too pushy. I don't really know what to do during follow-up. It's too hard to remember. I can't keep track of who I should be talking to and what I should be saying and where I'm at and juggling all those people. They're all very legitimate, very real barriers to follow up. You might be thinking that. The other thing you might be saying is, you know, Mona, I hear you, but we do our follow-up. I assure you of that. And my response to you would be, that's wonderful, that's great. Let's examine the current follow-up statistics. What are people doing for follow-up these days? So here are some numbers I think you might really be interested in. For those who do follow-up, 25% make a second contact and then stop there. 12% make only 3 contacts and then stop there. And you notice the numbers are getting smaller. Only 10%, the best of the best, make more than 3 contacts for follow-up. Well, to really get a good picture for what that means, we have to contrast it to how much follow-up does it take to get results. And I'm so glad you asked that question. Here are those numbers. 2% of sales are made on the second contact, the second follow-up. 5% of sales are made on the third contact. Again, notice the numbers are getting larger. 10% of sales are made on the fourth contact. And a whopping 80% of sales are made on the 5th to the 12th contact. Pretty impressive, huh? So in this case, persistence really takes off. And do you remember the best of the best, the 10%? This is where they stop, at the third contact. So by my calculations, that leaves about 93% of sales on the table that don't close because of follow-up. So you can see what the disconnect is, can't you? It's follow-up. It's clear. Follow-up produces results. And given that follow-up is the #1 business failure, if we're honest, I think we can all relate. Now, don't worry, I didn't stick it to your office and take a picture of your laptop, but if you leave follow-up to sticky notes or a person's memory, it becomes a hit-or-miss proposition at best. But before you go beating up on the people who are responsible for doing follow-up, even if that's you, let's consider realistically the challenges that they face in doing their follow-up. Here's how it goes. They get an inquiry. They have the best of intentions of following up with that lead. Perhaps they create themselves a note, a sticky note, an Outlook task, whatever that is. But then somebody walks through the door, the phone rings, an email comes in from their boss asking for a report, and then another call happens, and before you know it, time has slipped by, and now there are several inquiries that they need to follow up with. They're piling on top of each other. Then days go by, and the pile has become bigger and bigger and very unmanageable. And then you don't remember who, what, where, and they experience, yep, you got it, an oh shoot moment, where they wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh shoot, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to call somebody back, but I don't remember what I was supposed to say. I'm kind of embarrassed that I've dropped the ball. Yeah, we get it. So what's the answer? What's the solution? What's the silver bullet? Well, before I get to the answer, let's talk about some tips for follow-up. Now, I have Googled follow-up, and everyone recognizes it's a problem. Everyone says that follow-up is very important, and you have to do it in order to succeed. But what amazed me is that no one tells you how to do your follow-up. So I put together some tips I'd like to share with you on follow-up. The first one is that your follow-up should be appropriate. Now, your inquiries come from a variety of sources, from your website, from your sticky points, from realtor referrals, call-ins, etc. We know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the fastest growing source of leads is the Internet. Now, where your leads comes from should determine how they receive follow-up. Who they are, what they're interested in, should also determine the nuances of your follow-up. So, of course, that involves asking really good questions, digging down to reasons and motivations and what made them contact you, and then tailor your follow-up to be relevant for them and for their interests. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if they contacted you about one community, don't send them information about another community that you have across town. But instead, you might want to follow up with them with an invitation to an event, or maybe there's a community thing that you're doing. Oftentimes, also, your web leads indicate for you who they are. So, for example, if an inquiry downloads an article from your website on top 10 advantages of living in a gated community, you can pretty much identify that this is a prospective buyer who is looking into gated communities. By contrast, if they download an article on how to sell more homes in a gated community, they're most likely a realtor or a referral source. So your responses to them should be relevant and very appropriate. All right, number 2, your follow-up should be consistent and it should be quick. Now we know that the longer it takes to do follow-up, the lower statistically the likelihood is that we're going to get it done. Also, there are some new statistics that I'm going to share with you later that indicate that if you contact a web lead within 5 minutes of them reaching out to you, you're 100 times, not 100%, 100 times more likely to reach them and to sell to them than if you wait just 30 minutes. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. But your follow-up should be consistent and it should be quick. Your follow-up should also have a reason and a goal or objective, a call to action. Please, please, please don't ever just call and say, I'm just calling to follow up. Now you know how that makes you feel when somebody does that to you. Almost like they're wasting your time and all you can think about is coming up with an excuse to get off the phone. Admit it. I mean, we've all done it. I actually just did it last week. A gentleman called and said, hi, Mona, my name is so-and-so. I'm just calling to follow up with, and I can honestly tell you I don't know what he said after that because my own thoughts were, how do I get off the phone? What's the quickest, most polite way to get off the phone? Because what that told me is, one, he was calling for a reason that was important to him. He didn't have anything that was important to me. And he didn't have a real reason to call. Which leads me to my next point, have a reason to call. Maybe you're calling to invite them to an event. Maybe there's a community block party or a holiday party. Or maybe you're calling to give them some information that they might find interesting. Like maybe someone just moved into the community who was also from Massachusetts like they were. And, you know, you're calling because you just wanted to let them know and invite them in for coffee, to have, you know, a cup of coffee with this new resident or some excuse and a reason to call. One of my favorite reasons to call, and I do this a lot, is to just call because you have a couple of quick questions. Now, human nature is such that people love to talk about themselves. They love that their opinion is valued. So when you call and say, hey, I'm just curious, I wanted to ask what you thought of our clubhouse. I wanted to ask it what you thought, you know, we could do to provide you whatever. I just want your opinion about this. You know, that does a number of things. One is it disarms them, and it engages them with a conversation and allows you to be friendly with them and personal. Now, you know that people buy from friends. They don't like to buy from salespeople. So that's a great reason to call. And again, along with your reason to call, also have a defined objective, a call to action, or what we would call a next step. I'm calling, I want to ask you this, and have a next step that you want to make another follow-up that you will do with them later. Another tip is to make sure that your follow-up is personal. Nobody likes canned follow-up emails that look generic, like they were sent to 59,000 of their friends and family. You want to personalize your emails. If when you met with them and you're asking questions and you're becoming friendly and they tell you about their dog Rover, then you might want to mention their dog Rover. Or maybe they talk about how they're a gardener and their favorite flower is an iris or what have you. You could say that you were in, you know, a grocery store and you saw their favorite flower. Of course, be honest. But have something that makes it personal, not just in your follow-up calls, but your follow-up emails. Refer to something you discussed in your last conversation. Now, if you've done a great job of asking questions before, then making your subsequent calls or making your emails personal is going to be a lot easier on you. The fifth reason is your follow-up path should be standardized and automated. Now, the problem with leaving follow-up to an individual is that you're going to get different results. And if you've ever been to one of our workshops at our seminars, we actually do an exercise where we have people close their eyes and we have them follow the same instructions. And at the end of the exercise, everybody's results are completely different. And of course, we make a big joke about, why didn't you do what I told you to do? I gave you very specific instructions. But the results are people perceive things differently. And standardizing and automating your follow-up allows your top performer, who always gets great results, and your new person who just started last week with a little bit of training to follow the exact same methods and get the exact same results. Think about a McDonald's franchise. I'll just plant that thought in your head right now. Follow-up should also be automated to avoid the oh shoot moments. So that's a great opportunity for technology to do your follow-up for you and be your assistant. Not your master, your assistant to help you out. All right, your follow-up should also be pre-planned, not haphazard or subjective or left to a person's memory. Now, you wouldn't get in your car and start driving without a road map or destination, right? Well, the same thing applies to your follow-up. You know where you're going. You've thought through the steps ahead of time, so you're not winging it. And even if you hit a detour or a roadblock, you can get around it, you can get back on the path you defined, and you can reach your objective. I'll tell you, what you don't want to do is you don't want the first time your team or you to think about follow-up to be the time when they have to do it right there on the spot. That's going to create a whole lot of unnecessary stress, and it's going to lower the chances that it gets done. Now, I know these tips all sound like common sense, and you're thinking, that's pretty simple, but honestly, we know that they're a lot easier said than done. So is there a secret, a great, effective, consistent, bulletproof follow-up? And if so, what is it? Well, let's think outside our box. Let's give ourselves permission to not limit our thinking. And let's look at another industry, just for a moment. Have you ever been out of town or out of the country and stopped at McDonald's? Do you know why McDonald's is such a successful chain? Yep, it's their fries. Their fries taste the same here as they do in Minnesota or California or Hawaii or anywhere. So how does McDonald's do it? Well, one, they've created a successful French fry recipe. And two, they have a replicatable, reproducible process that ensures that no matter where you go, no matter who cooks them, no matter what language that person speaks, their fries are always the same. They're always consistent, they're always uniform, they're always hot. You will always get a consistent experience from McDonald's to McDonald's because they've automated the system and they've taken all of the guesswork out of the process. Now, there is a reason why French fries franchise success rates are so high. Don't you want every experience at your community to be the same memorable white glove experience regardless of who's involved, regardless of who greets the prospect, who gives a tour of the community, and who does the follow-up? Well, of course we do. We have a mantra that says you can't duplicate your success unless you can replicate your process. Now, we already know the value and the preciousness of new leads these days. Some industry estimates place the cost of a new lead at about $500 per lead. Ouch, really expensive. So what's the point of generating new leads, of reviving prospects, and working with realtors to get leads, piquing their attention, getting them engaged, if then we drop the ball with follow-up? Now, I'm not trying to be harsh at all. I'm just trying to set the stage for, do you remember the old Ronco commercials? They had a Veggie-Matic and a machine that you could put a whole turkey in, press a few buttons, and they would chant, set it and forget it. Do you remember that? Well, now they have the Slice-O-Matic and the Veggie-Matic, the same concept, same company. Well, we loved that idea. We thought, what if you could apply that same set it and forget it concept to your follow-up processes? What if you could create entire follow-up processes that were based on best practices for your market for all different types of leads, website leads, leads brought in by a referral, walk-ins, ABC leads, you name it. Well, we did it. We built the Task-O-Matic. And yes, it's a play on words on the set it, forget it concept. But I promise you'll never forget the name, even if you laugh. What a Task-O-Matic allows you to do is pre-build your follow-up sequence of activities for everyone based on your best practices. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that this is an A prospect Task-O-Matic. I just want to illustrate how a Task-O-Matic works. And we have sat down together and said, for all of our A prospects, in this illustration, here's how we want their follow-up to happen. On day 1, we want Jane Doe to send out a handwritten thank you note. On day 3, we want the account executive or sales counselor to make a thank you call. And during that thank you call, we want them to ask certain discovery guide questions, we call them, just to kind of drill down and discover and get some information. On day 5, we want the community to send out a packet of information, maybe from the sales manager. Thank you for coming by. Here's some information we thought would be interesting to you. On day 7, we want to send out a value proposition about what a great bargain this community is, what great pricing we have, those kinds of things. On day 10, we have another call that links to a different discovery guide or maybe the same discovery guide. On day 15, we want to send out a testimonial and reference letter. Now, if you watch the teaser statistics at the beginning, you know that referrals from friends and family trumps every other marketing source point. So anytime you can include testimonials and referrals, that is a great asset to you. So you want to make sure and incorporate that. So you get the idea. On day 25, there's another call. On day 30, in this illustration only, there's a plan to reevaluate. So here's how it works. We have the pre-built Task-O-Matic for an A prospect. When we encounter an A prospect, we launch them on an A prospect Task-O-Matic. And in our world, Developers Advantage takes over for you. On the right day and the right time, the right activity shows up in the right person's inbox, like this day 1. Jane Doe will get a message to send out a handwritten thank you note. The verbiage could even be there. When she completes that, the system fires the next action on the next day and time for whoever it's assigned to, in this case a sales counselor, who's supposed to make a thank you call. But what's really cool about this is they're supposed to ask discovery guide questions. And instead of expecting them to remember them, or maybe if they're new they don't know what they are, or work from someone else's memory, it pops up with a list of that discovery guide questions where they can just fill it out while they're on the phone. They can word it their own way or what have you, but all those questions that they're supposed to ask are right there. When they complete that, the system fires the next action. On day 7, that's an email, that's a value proposition. That email is already pre-built. It's already pre-written. It's grammatically correct. It's spell checked. We have postured the community the way we want it postured. It pops up for the sales counselor in this illustration to complete. And what they do is they personalize it. This is where they talk about their dog Rover, or the fact that they were at Publix the other day and saw an iris and they were thinking of them. Whatever that is, so it's not canned. But the bulk of it's pre-written. They don't have to remember who or what, where. They just have to personalize. Then when they complete that, it fires the next action. On day 15, this is a testimonial, this is a letter. It does the same thing. It merges it with the template, already pre-written. All they've got to do is personalize it. They complete it. So you can see how by launching your leads and your prospects on Task-O-Matics, they can never, ever fall through the cracks again because it's bulletproofed. Yes, you can customize it along the way. You can personalize the emails, the letters, the what have you. You can push a task back. You can remove one. You can stop it if it's no longer appropriate. But if they do nothing else than follow the yellow brick road, they will never have another oh shoot moment where they say, oh shoot, was I supposed to call Jane Doe? Or what did I say? Or those kinds of things. So you can see how by developing and using Task-O-Matics or something like that, you're creating standardized processes. You're basically creating tracks to run on that are based on your best practices. We can help you with these. We've done this so many times. We know a lot of what they are, but they're based around yours. It will also give your top performers who've been around and get great results the same results as a newbie and more of a level playing field. Because regardless of where those leads came from, if it was your website or a realtor, they end up on a custom track that you've created to engage them, to nurture the relationship with them, and of course, to move them to buy. So think about that. How many more prospects and referral sources or realtors or buyers could you manage effortlessly and at the same time if all your systems were all predefined for you, set up for you, and even automatically done for you, kind of set it and forget it style? Wouldn't it be almost impossible for anyone to ever fall through the cracks again? Now we know that whether they call in or they're referred to you by a realtor or they come through your website, walk through your door, fresh leads are not only expensive, but they're precious these days. And your follow-up is the single most important key to turning leads into buyers. Now this is my one self-serving slide. I wanted to show you what that looks like in Developer's Advantage. Now your sales team doesn't have to figure out what to do or what to say or what to write or when to do it. They can just simply breeze through a whole lot of follow-up in just a few seconds. They just have to push buttons, make calls, and do what's important, develop relationships. Here's a great example of where technology is your assistant, again, not your master, because by automating your systems, you can focus on the high-value activities, relationships, that ultimately will generate revenue, and let your technology take care of all your automated things and be your reminders. The other thing Task-O-Matics will do is they eliminate lost prospects who fall through the gap whenever you have employee turnover. And we know that when people leave, inevitably the relationships, the processes, the opportunities that were in the works or in the manila folders get lost unless you have some way of picking up where they left off. Now, the bottom line is that lack of follow-up is the #1 leak in our sales process. We know that. It's very expensive. It's totally unnecessary. But the good news is it's really fixable, and the payoffs are significant in your revenue. It's so much easier to stop that leak than it is to buy more leads at $500 a pop, right? Now, keep in mind that if you do follow up with your prospects, your competitions will not be able to hold a candle to you because they don't have any way of doing that. This is really a case of he who has the best system wins. Now, another way of looking at it is this systemization is what I call the Slinky marketing concept. Now, I love Slinkies. I actually have a couple on my desk. When you look at a Slinky, you'll notice it's a very simple but ingenious design. All it is loop after loop connected end to end. Now, I tell people that your sales, your marketing, your communication process should look like a Slinky. Okay, so you start at the top, you get a lead, whether it's online marketing, realtor, walk-in, what have you. Your leads then go into your system, are assigned to an account manager. They are set on follow-up Task-O-Matics that are relevant for where they came in and what they expressed interest to. And then you follow up with them and you convert them to close. And then you repeat that cycle over and over and over again. Now, the shampoo people call that shampoo, rinse, and repeat. I like to say you repeat over and over again until they buy, cry, or get a restraining order, whichever comes first. I know it's silly, but I laugh every time I say that. I think it's great because it's very true. Now, in order to leverage this whole Slinky concept and make it work for us, we've got to combine or marry some key functions into one. your CRM, which is your Client Relationship Manager, or what we call your Client Relationship Maze. It's where contacts go in, but they never come out, because traditionally CRMs don't do anything for you. They don't trigger anything. They don't remind you of anything unless you put in a note. So we lovingly call them Client Relationship Maze. But your CRM has to talk to your communication system if you're using something like a Constant Contact or something like that. That has to integrate with your follow-up system. Hopefully it's not sticky notes, which has to be fed by your website and your internet efforts. All of those things have to work like a hand in glove. That will be humanly impossible without an entire army of staff, and that unfortunately is a luxury that most of us don't have anymore. Now we recognize that. We created this whole holistic system, if you will, called Developer's Advantage. And here are some of the components that are included in the Developer's Advantage system. What's beautiful about them is that they all talk to each other. What happens in one area drives what happens in another area. So it incorporates your CRM, your notes, your history, your contact information, but it also ties directly to your email marketing, providing them a smart response page or a way to respond back to you, your print marketing, your set it and forget it follow-up that we call that's right, Task-O-Matic, your property design options and your homes or units, your agreements and contract creation that are actually automatically generated and calculated for you in Developer's Advantage, your tracking of your activity or your points, the fact that, of course, it's mobile-based, so it can be accessed from your computer, from your laptop, from your smartphone, from your iPad, anywhere essentially you can get on the Internet, even if you're in Hawaii. Your website sticky points, which I'm going to explain to you here in a moment, and any of your online marketing efforts from social media, your pay-per-click, things again that we call sticky points, and of course interactive reporting. By interactive we mean they're clickable. So if you see a number like 25 new prospects, you can click on that, it'll show you who they are and allows you to drill down into their history. So those are some of the components, if you will, of the Developer's Advantage, and you can see here visually how they all tie together. It's so important that they all be able to talk together and talk to one another. So one thing triggers something else. You get a lead in, it triggers a notification. It starts follow-up. It automatically ties to your website. All of those other good things. Now, one thing that we do know for sure is that the Internet is one of the fastest growing marketing sources in business today. And the Internet's not going away. In fact, studies show that in today's climate, 87% of people who contact you will check you out online first. And you can see that number has grown from 79% a couple years ago. So if they're checking you out online first, that's great news for your website and your social media efforts. It means they're working. But it also means that if they're checking you out online, they're most likely checking out your competition as well. So your ability to interest them, to engage with them, and to develop a relationship with them quickly is critical to your success. In fact, I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, but in this very recent study, it shows that if you contact your web leads, I told you, within 5 minutes of them reaching out to you, you're 100 times, not 100%, 100 times more likely to reach them and engage them than if you wait just 30 minutes. And when you think about that, it makes a lot of sense. Within 5 minutes, they're still on their computer. They've probably checked out your competition as well. They remember what they were looking for. It's still hot on their mind. It's still important to them. Whereas 30 minutes later, something else is going on. They've gone off to do something else, and they don't remember it. So it's really important that we reach out to them. And a lot of times, what we've done in the past, or what we might still be doing, is when we get an Internet lead, we send it to someone with the expectation that they reach out to them in an hour or 2 hours. And that just simply doesn't cut it anymore. So this Internet piece of the puzzle is really important. And that's where we introduced the concept of smart response pages, or what we call sticky points. Now, if you've never heard me talk about sticky points before, let me just kind of share that concept with you. Sticky points are just like sticky notes, but for people. They're simply interesting, intriguing places that people can stick. And they can exchange a piece of information about them. Ideally, it's their name, their phone, their email, so you can send them what you promised, in exchange for something that is interesting to them. So you can provide a piece of information, an article, a download. Videos are very, very hot right now. People would much rather watch a video than they would read a really long article. Those sticky points could take on the form of a Contact Us page, like you see here, where they can contact us, or they can become very sophisticated, where they can download an article or a video, or maybe an award-winning recipe by your award-winning chef at your clubhouse, whatever that is. When it comes to sticky points, your imagination is really your only limit. So what happens when those people download that sticky point? That inquiry or lead, if you can read the fine print here, now goes into your Developers Advantage system, and it goes in and creates a contact for them. It's assigned to someone on the inside that you have predefined. That person is contacted or notified that they have a new inquiry. But before they can even respond, they can be launched on a follow-up Task-O-Matic that immediately starts the process of engaging with them, reaching out to them, asking questions. And of course, the marketing source code of the sticky point is credited. So we can go back and see cost per lead, cost per sale. We can see which ones are generating what kinds of leads. And what's really cool about all this is it happens just when they click submit on that sticky point. And it happens instantaneously, not even 5 minutes later. So you can see, when you start thinking about what you can do with a sticky point, the options are really endless. A sticky point can also feed backwards. We call those smart response pages, where perhaps you're doing a revival campaign, that you're reaching out to inquiries that have gone dormant, that you haven't been able to reach, or you're trying to re-engage with someone, or realtors, or past buyers, or maybe they're existing residents, you name it. So here are some examples of some actual sticky points that we've done. This is come in for a free lunch and a tour. This is a revival campaign, and this is one where they can watch a video. So when you think about it, there are so many ways that you can use sticky points to engage people, pique their interest, and then start the process of developing a relationship with them, which ultimately is our goal. So you can kind of get an idea for what Developers Advantage does and how it works. It really creates tracks to run on, kind of like the McDonald's franchise concept that we talked about earlier. You put in place these processes that get followed exactly. No matter how busy things get, no matter who does the follow-up, nobody can ever fall through the cracks. It's kind of like having an electronic assistant that keeps us on track, that shares information with the different segments of our sales and marketing team, that reminds us of what we need to do next and when and what to say, and makes us look really good, basically for pennies a day. Finally, it gives us a chance to get rid of our oh shoe moments and come into a place of nirvana. Actually, this lady is more my style. So essentially, we're so happy that you joined us today. We hope that you really enjoyed the power of the set it and forget it follow-up. Even if you can follow those processes manually for a while to figure out what those are. But when you're ready to automate it, to take it to the next level, we would love to give you a very personal online tour of Developers Advantage so you can see the whole system and how it works and how it's very effective at increasing your home sales revenue by 9 to as much as 38%. Very effective, very powerful, and we'll show you some of the things that are just designed to make you more efficient, more effective, and make you look good. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're interested in taking a closer look, just reply back to me or send me a chat. I'll be happy to follow up with you. And I'll be happy to tell you about some specials that we have going on with Developers Advantage right now. So thanks so much. Have a great afternoon.